right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jessica Payne Live. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. It's been a minute. It's great to be back. It looks like we've got Ahimu there. Hey, Ahimu, if you can hear me, go ahead and type yes in the comments, will you? I've been having some fun technical adventures lately, and I want to make sure you guys can hear me loud and clear. Maybe you're listening to me over on the podcast. Hey, what up? Thanks for the subscribes. If you haven't subscribed already to the Brand Organics podcast, where an audio version of this is put up every week, then do so. If you're finding me on YouTube, thank you. We've got a bunch of things planned for that channel specifically, and I'm excited to roll that out. Maybe you have caught the beginning of my Instagram highlights, which happen right after every show. Every show this week is going forward. It's going to be 30 minutes. And then I've got my highlights on Instagram. And maybe you are just watching me live on Facebook, which you guys are my core audience. I love you. Today, we're going to talk about a big, hairy topic that's kind of boring, but really important for your business. It's GDPR. Are you ready? So I'm going to give it just another maybe 30 seconds or so. Come in, sit down, grab a coffee. I'm just going to check a few things on tech, make sure you can hear me loud and clear. We're talking about GDPR. And if you don't know what that is, give it a very quick Google. You probably signed a lot of or accepted a lot of emails in your inbox. Raise your hand if you got a ton last week, especially midweek, maybe on Friday, that asked you to take a look at people updating their privacy policies. It was funny because by the weekend, everyone was sort of making jokes on the internet. It's like, I opened my refrigerator and it's asking me to take a look at its new privacy policy. Dwayne, how's it going? Dwayne, can you hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up or a yes. That would be fantabulous. It looks like we've got Stephen Healy in the house. Stephen, I bet you can speak to GDPR directly, given it's a little bit closer to your neck of the woods. I'm talking about GDPR today, going to be joined by the fabulous RJ Redden of Black Belt Bots, which I know many of you know. GDPR is something that, frankly, every business needs to know because the internet is global. So it definitely affects my world. I work with businesses all over the world, but basically, if you have a website or an online presence, if you have a newsletter, you need to know what the heck GDPR is. And today I'm just going to walk through a handful of ways to just make sure that you're starting to look in the right directions. I have a feeling a lot of people attending today have probably ticked through those boxes because I know you all are brilliant. But just in case, and PSA, I am not a bona fide GDPR expert. I didn't write it. I'm not on any of the committees, but I do run a business and I have been advising my clients. So this is where to start. But I really encourage you to make sure that you open all the doors and look under every nook and cranny of your business to make sure you're compliant. So how about I give you a quick top line of what GDPR is and we dive right into it. Again, today on Jessica Payne Live, I always talk about real is greater than perfect. So anything can happen live, and I'm going to do my best to just kind of tick through. I've outlined sort of 3 areas that I think every business, no matter the size, no matter where you are on the globe, can probably look first just to make sure that you are being GDPR compliant. Hey, Stephen, how are you? All right, what the heck is GDPR? Well, it basically took effect as of last week. And frankly, GDPR, those letters stand for the General Data Privacy Regulation. And to make a long story short, as of Friday, there's been this global mandate. If you collect data from anywhere within the EU, you need to make sure that you comply with certain privacy rules. And this is all about the climate we live in now. Basically, I predict that we're going to see a lot more decisions like this, where basically we all have to be more transparent about where we collect the data and how we use it. You know that mumbo jumbo that was buried at the bottom of every terms and service, and that little tiny piece of copy at the end of like whenever we signed up to something. You kind of knew that information was there. You didn't really know what data was being collected. And sometimes you just found yourself, I don't know, subscribed to something you didn't know you subscribed to. Well, basically, the world is cracking down on that. And it's our responsibility as stewards of, I don't know, good business and transparency to just disclose. Just disclose. Just be upfront. Hey, This is the data that I'm going to collect from you. This is how I plan to use it. Here's all the information you need to know about it. And then with the new GDPR compliance, sometimes what it's going to make, it's basically empowering your customers to be like, hey, if they ever have any question about that, they can always say, hey, can you clarify that again? Or to some, they can even request that data. That's a mouthful. But long story short, as a business, unless you have sort of blocked the entire EU, you're going to need to make sure you're GDPR compliant. If you have a website, that's global. You probably have visitors who come into your website from the EU. I know I do. I know I've got folks who watch the show that are within the EU. If you have a newsletter, which 99.9% of us do or did, check that analytics. I guarantee you've got at least one person within the EU. If you're collecting any sort of data, name, email, address, and you then use it for something else, you need to disclose that. And I've got tips on how to make sure you're doing that. If you use something like a chatbot, if you're collecting data from people, if you're right here on Facebook, if you're on YouTube and you're using third-party apps, if you use Zapier, if you're using a marketing app, you need to disclose that. Now, the good news is all of those annoying emails that you probably received last week, it's a good sign. It means that, I don't know, I received an email from every single app that I pay for, subscribe to, and use. And I love that because it means they're on top of it. They've updated their own privacy policy. But also, I've seen a ton of how-tos, tutorials. There's no lack of information about what you can do to make sure you protect your business. And at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is lose the trust, the hard-earned trust that you've worked extremely hard to get from your customers if they feel they've been swindled in any sort of way. I doubt that'll ever be the case, but you just don't want to find yourself in that area or in direct violation of EU. So I'm going to jump right in. Here are a couple of tips that I recommend. The first place you start, and again, this is just based on my own experience. You really want to make sure that you do your homework. First and foremost, I'm going to give a quick shout out to Stephen Healy. We've got RJ Red and Beep Boop, Black Belt Bot. She's going to be joining me any second now. We've got Dwayne Richards, all of these fantabulous business owners, entrepreneurs. So I know you guys are on top of this. And I'm curious, have you guys run into any issues, situations? Let me know. RJ, give me a quick chat. You've got your link. Give me a holler if when you're ready, or just appear when you're ready to go. We'll bring you on. RJ is going to join me to talk specifically about that bot section. So the first thing I want to do is talk about probably where we should all start with the privacy policy. Super boring, but wicked important. So all those emails you got, you need to make sure as a business you're doing the same darn thing. So something really cool happened. And this is the first place I would recommend you check. I build websites for clients and I run my own website on WordPress. I'm a WordPress gal. You might use Squarespace, you might use Wix. All of the major sort of web platforms and hosting platforms have probably already got something in place that you just need to click through and follow to build. WordPress early last week had something pop up. I was logged in as always to my website. They had a privacy policy notice. They were on top of it, which you would expect from a WordPress. So if you have a website and you haven't maybe logged into your dashboard in a while and you're on WordPress, log in as soon as, like right now, or as soon as this episode is over, and you'll see something that's popped up all about privacy policy. And what's next is pretty beautiful. They also created a template, like a copy and paste, for you to actually build a privacy policy on your website. And all this means, if you don't know what this means, perfect timing because you need to comply with this. Basically, within 10 minutes, I had a refreshed privacy policy page built on my website that I can now link to. Why the heck is this important? This is the first thing I would recommend you do. Log into wherever you manage your website. For a lot of you, that's probably WordPress, and if that's, then you're going to go through the exact same experience I did. But if it's Wix, Squarespace, even Weebly, I know I'm missing one up there. Go ahead and log in and make sure. Create just a privacy policy on your website and just point to it. If you want to see what mine looks like, you can go to my website. I'll link to it in here, and you can just click on privacy policy. In the footer of my website, I just say privacy policy. All you have to do, again, is just kind of over communicate. Okay, here's the data I collect on my website. For most people, it's either they fill out a contact form to contact me, or they want to be a guest on my show, or they sign up for my newsletter. I'm kind of overstating the obvious, but it's important. So now, no doubt, I've ticked the first box. You need to have some sort of privacy policy. I'm in the US, a fraction of my followers are within the EU, but I do look at my analytics. I have people coming from the EU to my website every single day. So the first thing you want to do is create your own privacy policy. Don't feel like you have to recreate the wheel. It's probably already been done for you or built for you. If you're on WordPress, just log in and follow the directions. But check your inbox, because that's probably where you have more information from the platform that you use to build your website. How many of you guys have a privacy policy on your site? I'm curious. Don't worry, RJ. I'm sending you a link right now via email. This took me less than 20 minutes to build. It's just a page. It's just a page that says, there she is. It's just a page that says, oh, hey, here's the information I collect. I'll link to it in the comments. It's really boring legalese and mumbo jumbo, but it's super, super clear and probably overkill about what I collect. People appreciate that, and we just have to get used to. It's just there as an option in case people want to know more. I'm not going to be blogging this stuff. I'm not going to be, putting it on the home page. It's just a link in my footer. Does that make sense? Okay. The second area, and I'm going to bring you on in a sec. RJ, let's see if I can bring you on. Join me. Hello. What up, RJ? RJ Redden in the house.
Good to see you. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. I apologize for my lateness. It totally blanked on me where the guest link to join was, but I found it.
It's all good. I like to keep you on your toes, RJ. No, I'm kidding. We've got a bunch of our family and friends on here. We've got Stephen Healy. We've got Dwayne Richards. We've got a good friend of mine, Ahimu. He's building an amazing app right now. Oh, he's like on the forefront. I know, right? He's super smart. I'm honored to have him here. So I just talked about something really boring but useful called a privacy policy. And now I'm going to quickly just talk about a newsletter, and then we're going to jump right into bots. How's that sound? Perfect. Cool beans, you guys. So we talked first privacy policy, the most boring of where you need to start. But start there. Protect your website. You've probably spent a lot of money and time building it. And it's a beautiful thing that you have people coming to your website from around the world. They probably have included the people from the EU. Brilliant. These are all good problems to have. Put a privacy policy up. If you already have one, just update it and you're good to go. Hey, this is the data I collect. This is how you use it. I will link to it in the comments right after the show. Second one, let's talk very, very quickly, because I think this is where our worlds collide. Raise your hand if you have a mailing list, because you probably do. Even if it's one you haven't touched in a while. You might use something like I'm a MailChimp girl. There's MailChimp, Constant Contact. What else is out there? We all know as marketers, as stewards of our business, we got to nurture our lists. Raise your hand if you have subscribe to my newsletter, maybe on your website, maybe on your blog. Maybe you mention that in your show. All right. This is another example of overkill. When you ask people to subscribe to your newsletter, you are asking them to hand over some data. It's super obvious. However, to be GDPR compliant, you kind of want to over communicate now what exactly you're asking people to do. You're collecting probably their name, email address, maybe a phone number. I don't know. It depends. Maybe you run an online store. Maybe you're asking for some more information. Okay, so you need to say, this is the information I'm asking for. This is how I'm going to use it, which is probably the most important piece of information we're now starting to use. That's what this is. People were really pissed off about Facebook. This mandate came down. People just want to know, what are you doing with my stuff? We know you're collecting stuff about us. What is it? Where are you going to use it? So RJ, I don't know if you've looked into this too much, but again, I just want to, guys, check your inbox, because you probably have an email from whatever email service you use. For me, I love MailChimp. I lucked out. They over communicated this. They emailed me early last week saying, hey, here's our privacy policy. By the way, here's a template. Here's a campaign you can send out to your list right now. And here's a how-to to make sure all of your lists are GDPR compliant. I zipped through that in about 30 minutes. And now I know my thousands and thousands of subscribers, and everything I go going forward is totally going to be above board.
That's wonderful. I mean, I didn't get that from ConvertKit. Let's just say that.
All right. So this is, MailChimp knows what they're doing. I got to say, plug MailChimp. So there you go. But essentially what you want to do is Google whatever you use to send email and Google the letters GDPR. They've probably run it something on their company blog, and they've probably pointed to resources of what to do next. That's all I'm saying. It sounds really confusing, but it's not. What you essentially want to do is, at the end of the day, a mailing list. Look, we offer freebies. We want to get signups. We all have a strategy to how do we get our list built? Well, now we just have to disclose when and where and how we're getting information. On my website, above my newsletter, it's overkill, but I even have verbiage that says, hey, when you're signing up to this, you're opting in to sign into data. That's all that is. Again, super boring, super important. If you use ConvertKit, if you use MailChimp, you use Constant Contact, check their company website, Google the letters GDPR, find out what those next steps are to do. Because I think if there's one area where folks might kind of stumble, it's like if they just ignore their mailing list. And I think that's like where everyone is probably at the most risk of falling short of complying with GDPR, because a mailing list is legitimately like using personal information and data.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
well, and if I may add just a little thing, Jessica, if you were not contacted by your email provider last week, if you Google your email provider and they have nothing on GDPR, I beg of you, choose another email provider, because these people they obviously don't have their bases covered, and you don't want to risk whatever will happen if you break this law. You know what? You're a small business owner. You don't have time for this. So please get with somebody who is compliant and is helping you be compliant.
Yeah. So there you go.
PSA.
Yeah. And I think 99.9% of your tools and apps have probably done this, but if they haven't, that's great advice from RJ. It's like, maybe sometimes it helps to work with the big dogs or to work with the service you pay for, because in a way, that investment is protecting your business. Okay. Yeah. Right. So we've talked about privacy policy. We've talked about mailing lists. I want to spend the rest of the next 15 minutes or so devoted. The queen herself is here, RJ. Because you guys might not have thought about apps and tools like bots. And using them uses personal data. So RJ, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to turn it over to you. Again, you guys, today the topic is GDPR. Are you ready? We've talked about privacy policies. We've talked about mailing lists. What can we as business owners with an online presence do to protect our businesses? RJ, why the heck should we think about bots when it comes to GDPR? And what can we do to be compliant?
Well, a lot of people don't really think about bots in this particular context because, I'm not collecting information. Technically you are, because you can see the information, and you didn't go out and collect this person's first name. Facebook collected it for you, gave it to ManyChat, who then gave it to you. And their policy is that now that's your information.
Right.
So we do have to think about bots. If you've got one at all, please do think about this GDPR stuff, because it affects you whether you're actually processing the information or doing anything with it at all or not. You're still on the list for being liable. So, but it's with everything, it just takes a couple of steps to GDPR proof yourself. One, as Jessica did last week, as I did last week, send out a message to all your current people and say, hey, got this thing coming up. Do I have your consent to use to access this information within the bot? I say within the bot because for me, I am not yet taking people's information out of the bot and throwing it to a third party, like a CRM or an email or something like that.
So what's an example of what you're doing now? Because I know I'm subscribed to your bot.
So what I'm doing now is within the bot, I am really focusing it on having conversations and making connections. I'm not focusing it on data collection whatsoever. I feel like for me, a lot more interest is generated within the bot than it will ever be on an email list, because I am one of those people who only email every 180 days, whether people like it or not. And that's just how I'm wired. I know that there are marketing people out there right now ripping their hair out going, what the hell are you doing? But for me, I don't need to take your information out. There are plenty of people that do that.
Yeah.
There are people that will take the first name, last name, email and put it into a CRM, put it into an email provider.
Or a tool like a Zapier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're called Zaps with Zapier. You can zap that information to a spreadsheet anytime, but you still have to, with everybody you've done that with, you have to go back. You have to look at your audience now and go back and say, okay, who gave me their email address before the 25th of May, and go back and get their consent. Give them a way out. If they don't want you zapping that information out, then you have to erase it. You have to, say bye-bye to it. The whole thing about GDPR, and the wording was very, very specific. It has to be freely given consent to use the information. Which means to me, you have to give them a way out. You have to give them a way to say, no, I don't want you to use my stuff. And complying with that's very, very important.
And that's all it is, right? It's just, here's the information I use. Here's how I would like to use it. Are you cool with that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love this. I love the law. Me too. Definitely.
I have to say I'm a fan.
You're a fan now. So tell me why. Tell me why you're a fan, or did you already cover this?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm a fan because it shows data and privacy and collection is now a global topic. Any focused interest on, and it's clunky and it's stumbling and it's really annoying people like Zuckerberg. It's annoying as heck to companies and especially marketers who've been riding the wave of, oh, we just collect that data and use it. Isn't it smart? I really do feel it is on the side of consumers. As a consumer too, I want to know where my data is being collected and used. I think information offers clarity, and clarity empowers people. So I just hope that it becomes the expectation, and I would predict that we're going to see it come from outside of the EU. But I think again, the internet is global, so that's why you saw a lot of American-based companies emailing us Americans. So I'm a fan because, I think it's now going to become more of a commonplace, a common practice. That's just me. It's annoying as heck for us businesses to go through this paperwork, but it's almost like a set it and forget it and just keep up with the rules, right?
Exactly. And really with a bot, for me, I went back, I messaged all my people. I said, I use your first name within this bot. Is that okay with you? For the people that said no, I scrubbed their information. Now they're showing up as unknown in my bot. They're still there, but they're unknown. That's fine with me. And going forward this weekend, I redid every single entrance into my bot and added the consent in there. And you know what? That a cool side effect was that it allowed me to consolidate some of those old growth tools that weren't working so well. And I got to, revamp and revitalize and do all that kind of stuff that's always on my list, but I never seem to get around it. But I put the consent everywhere that you can enter my bot. I put it everywhere. Everybody has to say, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that. And even in my live streams where you can type in, live to get reminders, even that one has a consent in it. So I'm ready. I'm set. Now I'm just catching up on my clients that need to do it now. But yeah, you can set this and forget it, the GDPR. And I have to go back and add that I'm a huge fan too. Anything that says, you know what, let's give people some actual respect. Let's let people have a choice. I am all cheerleading all the way. Because the way that this has been done, it's one of those things I think we're going to look at it 20 years from now and go, really? Did people just swipe people's data and add them to an email list without telling them? Really?
That's all this is. It doesn't mean companies are going to stop collecting data. They're probably going to find new ways to collect it.
I'm sure.
Speaking of type live for show updates, guys, boom. If you do want show updates, you can subscribe to my bot, type live for show updates. RJ Redden gave me this idea. By the way, full disclosure, because we're all about transparency, RJ has been helping me run my bots. So I actually last week went through the same exact process she coached me to do, over communicate what I'm doing, what data I'm collecting, giving my subscribers an opportunity to opt in or out. RJ, you mentioned the lingo that you're now including with the bots. And I think what you're talking about is now with every chatbot communication, every message you send to people, are you talking about the unsubscribe messaging? Can you clarify what you're talking about? Because I think I might get questions on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So every time someone enters a bot, you need to have a couple things. And one of them is, hey, if you ever want to stop getting messages from me, just type unsubscribe or stop and you'll stop this bot. I usually add it as a PS. I add it right in the beginning because I want people to know that they can opt out whenever they want. I also added the privacy statement that says, hey, I see some information that Facebook gives me about you, and I promise that I will only use it within this bot. Do I have your consent to do that? And people can hit yes or no. And that is all a part of every single pathway into my bot has those two things on it now. It used to just have, type stop to unsubscribe, that little statement. Now I've added the consent statement in there because I want to, let's just get it out on the table. Let's be transparent as marketers. Yeah. And let's say, I will use your information because I usually use people's first name within the bot to personalize the experience.
Right.
People seem to like it. So I say, I'm going to use this information only within this bot. And then I also have, and this is totally an addendum, it's like a little best practice or whatever. I totally have that you can type the words privacy policy at any time to see my bot privacy policy.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm going to ask you about that. Guys, that's super smart.
I made it shorter than your normal privacy policy.
Which I've just linked to. It's wicked boring, but I've linked to it in the comments if you guys want to see my website one. I love this, RJ, because people will probably want to read that information, but not have to go to your website to read it, right? So you put it right in the bot.
Well, and I generated one specifically for my bot.
Love it.
I generated a shorter one that seems like it has super clear, regular, normal, everyday language instead of all the legalese. Mm-hmm. And I didn't link to the whole thing in one text box. I gave it to him a couple of sentences at a time, just like I do normally in the chat box. So it's definitely for the bot, and it's delivered in a different way, because I do want people to understand they have rights, they have choices, and this is a place, and I'm always striving to do this in my bots. The bots are a place where you have a choice as to what you want to receive, what kind of information you want to give and receive. The bots are a place where you can have respect and space in your own choices. And this GDPR thing is just yet another opportunity for me to go, you know what? I'm going to add a privacy policy just for the bot here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make it so that it's, understandable and not in legalese. So yeah, that's a best practice. You don't have to do that. But when I sent out that message the other day to everybody within my bot, I said, I added that line about privacy policy, and 3 or 4 people looked it up.
That's the thing. You're just making it available. Yeah. That's the thing. So I'm just going to add that as an agenda. I think that's beautiful. Consider creating specific privacy policies, and that's not the best grammar or English, but what I'm trying to communicate in this small little postage stamp of a tagline is basically, of a caption is, if you run different tools that are maybe platform specific, maybe you run a chatbot, maybe you run an online forum, if there are other places you gather online that have a global footprint where there could be at least one person from the EU that engages and you capture data, gosh, it sounds like it's a really smart thing to create. Just to say, oh, hey, overkill. Here's my privacy policy for this group, this forum, this bot.
That's beautiful.
If you run a Facebook group, maybe create a little privacy policy post. Link back to maybe the one on your website. It's kind of the same strategy with affiliates. If you're an affiliate, sidestep. But if you're an affiliate, you kind of have to disclose that everywhere, right? So you want to make sure to do that. Maybe you have a lot of discussions on your YouTube channel in that discussion area. Do you use people's data there and link it to somewhere else? But I love that. Create a specific privacy policy, maybe a privacy policy specific to your bot. RJ, any parting words? Today we talked about, if you're just joining us, GDPR, are you ready? We've talked about a couple of solutions. RJ is blessing us with her presence. When it comes to these other tools besides websites, like bots, like apps, anything else we should keep in mind, especially for those who might be scratching their heads going, okay, so it's more than just reading that email. I might need to do something. Any parting words?
2 parting words. Well,
yes.
2 parting ideas.
Yeah.
One parting idea: if you can read someone's name and email address, or even just their name on the internet, you are counted as being a collector of information, even if you did not physically collect it yourself. So go make a big list everywhere that you can see people's information. You certainly can in a bot. So the list of things affected is the list of everywhere you can see somebody's name. Secondly, it's just reiteration of the point before. If your email provider hasn't contacted you, if your website provider hasn't contacted you, if your website designer hasn't contacted you, which I need to contact a couple people, but if they haven't contacted you yet and said, here's how you get through this GDPR thing, consider maybe going with one of the bigger companies, because you want to be protected, and you want people that are your third party people that you're connected to, you want them to be on their toes. You do. You just don't have time for the consequences if they're not. So,
that last one's a big one. I've sent so many emails, and I'm not a massive big company, but I'm obsessed with following rules. A lot of email conversations back and forth to my clients last week, because I build websites too.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were like, what are you talking about? Which was my first, and I always say it's an opportunity to educate. A lot of late nights, and as I'm sure, RJ, you were experiencing that probably for your clients on the bot side. There's like, how do I introduce this thing my clients are probably not even aware of happening, and how can I quickly make sure they're compliant? That was my world last week.
Yeah, me too.
And it was some late nights but at the end of the day, they're compliant. But yeah, that is sage advice. If you haven't heard from folks that are responsible for your online entities about this, then consider exploring other options. Yeah. And if you have a bot you need to run, call RJ Rudden. She's as good as it gets. You keep me on my toes, girl, and I love it.
I do.
Full disclosure, you guys, my bot, RJ, has been coaching me on those. I am not a bot guru. RJ is the bot ninja. You did a podcast recently on this topic, right?
Absolutely.
On GDPR? Okay.
I actually, I did a live stream and I did 2 podcasts, and they're all available on my blog.
Where can people go? Can I link to that in the comments?
Absolutely. So blackbeltbots.com, the bot signal / the bot signal is where it is all at. And the last one, I think second to last one is GDPR Your Bot, and lots of details there, lots of stuff to take advantage of.
And I love that because I get notifications every time one of your podcasts fires. So I just on my phone, it's like, it just makes me grin. When I saw GDPR Your Bot, it's like, she is so on it. And again, I am a client too. So as someone who has worked with RJ, it just makes me smile. That's all this is. It's just comfort. I feel empowered because I know RJ is on top of this topic. If she's talking about in live streaming and coaching me on how to be GDPR compliant, I don't have anything to worry about. Yeah. So no pressure, RJ. So that's all this is. Turn to your partners. Turn to the people in charge of your web entities. If you run all of that yourself, you're going to have to spend some time on Google or YouTube. There's a lot of how-tos. Yeah. Give me a call. Give RJ a call. So you're not kind of alone in this.
Yeah.
RJ, thanks for your time. I have linked to blackbeltbots.com, the bot signal, for that podcast and live stream. Dive deep, y'all, on GDPR. I'm going to now jump over to Instagram for a highlight reel. This is what I do every week. I'm just going to basically... I'm
loving this.
Right?
I'm loving this. I'm going to be jumping on and watching because that is some super cool stuff. I'm going to be taking notes on how you do this, Jessica.
Well, it's all about quick plug for my course, full transparency. I teach a course on live show mastery, this live streaming. And we have a toolkit that's all about going beyond Facebook, because Facebook isn't the world. And I know that I've got folks who follow me on Instagram who quite frankly never come on Facebook. It's fine. It's kind of a generational thing, but it's also, they're busy entrepreneurs. They can't catch me live on Facebook. So this was built on feedback. So after every show, and we hung out a little later today because I've got a beautiful VIP guest, I'm going to jump over to Instagram and just do a quick bang, 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 bang highlight reel and on a live. And it's been great. The feedback's been great. So if you're listening on the podcast, subscribe to my Instagram feed. It's jpaynebu. I'll link to it in the description. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can link to it right there you can click right in the description to that. But yeah, if you can't catch me live every week on FacePlace, on the Facebook, I'm over there on Insta. So I'm going to sign off. RJ, thanks so much for putting this into plain English. That's all this is, you guys. Just check your privacy policies, check your inbox, call your web designer, call RJ, and just make sure you're buttoned up, because you don't want to get sued or fined. And I'll leave you with that. RJ, thanks a million. Black Belt Bots, you guys, click on the link for those podcasts and her live stream to get up to speed on GDPR. Thanks so much, RJ. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to subscribe where you're at. Now join us over on Instagram. Bye, y'all. Let's give a wave, RJ. Bye. Bye, guys. It's been real.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.